Alright, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a longer video today, and that is going to be for these new character abilities. So of course, first glance, as you see right here, it looks completely different to the abilities that we have in game right now, and this is just because long term, this is what I would probably expect Apex to possibly look like. So first of all, we obviously have at the top Bloodhound and then the Recon class. That's something that I think they should add soon, hopefully, is just the little icon next to the character, because sometimes it can be a little bit confusing because it has the abilities on the top left, but then you have to look at the bottom where the character icon is to actually see what class they are, if you know what I mean. Or towards the right to see the class abilities, which I don't really know why they're over to the right, to be honest. I think it would be way better if they're off to the left, which is, as you can see, the thing at the very top, the survey beacon. And also I've made new abilities for each and every class to make it so they all have 2 abilities each. I don't know why some classes have 2 and some classes don't. Doesn't make sense to me, so I've obviously changed that. And then, as you can see as well, we have a weapon. So I think eventually, possibly in the game, each character could have like a signature weapon that they obviously are known for using and everything. Which obviously, now obviously some examples, of course, are the Charge Rifle with Bloodhound. He has a lot of lore with that, and also Bangalore with the G7, things like that. So each and every character would have their own weapon. Now what this means is, of course, you would drop it into the game with that weapon, but a very limited supply of ammo, and you can't get any more ammo after you went through it all. Similar to the red weapons, except these are going to be green rarity. So it's just kind of just similar to the red weapons, except they're not in the care pack, you just get them off drop. Something similar to that, and I think it'll be a pretty cool idea. And then the last thing I want to go over as well is the additional passive. So currently we only have 1 passive in the game based on the character. I think we could up that to 2, as some characters do actually have 2 passives. So for Bloodhound, for example, he actually does have another passive that isn't listed. It's just kind of bundled in with the other passive, and that is the White Raven. So occasionally see a White Raven flying towards the nearest enemy. And of course we have the Tracker passive, which enemies leave behind clues indicating their presence. And I've also, on each and every character, I've also included a backstory. So here's Crypto's one. As you can see, his weapon is the triple take. He's obviously still in the Recon class. His Neuralink passive, which is about the banners. You can ping banners at any point in the game, rather than just within your drone. And then off the grid, you deflect scans back at the user whilst being undetectable if stationary. And then you also have Crypto's backstory at the bottom there as well. Something you may also notice is a lot of the abilities have been extremely shortened in their description, which is what I think they should do eventually, because some of the descriptions are just over the top, like just so descriptive when it doesn't really need to be. But anyway, here we got 𝗙𝗂𝗁, we have the Recon perks as well. His weapon is the Prowler. Then we have the Heartseeker ability, which we already know about. Then we have Emergence, which is temporarily highlight very near or damaged enemies. So that's basically Maggie's passive. Kind of a little bit buffed a little bit, but then put onto 𝗙𝗂𝗁 instead. I'll get the Maggie soon. So that's all about 𝗙𝗂𝗁 there. Then we have Vantage. So her weapon is the Sentinel. We have the spotter lens right there. I've added a little bit about an enemy indicator, so when you're like nearby an enemy, it'll like make a little ping sound. And then we also have Respiratory Trainee. So the longer you aim on sight with snipers, the less the weapon sways. I think this is a really cool passive for Vantage to actually be essentially more accurate with snipers as well. And overall, I think she could be built more into the actual Recon role, as right now I don't really think she's much of a Recon legend. One last thing about the Recon class is you can see the additional passive that we'll have there, the Recon passive, the UAV, reveal and track enemies while skydiving. That is Valkyrie's additional passive. While skydiving, she highlights all enemies. So that's actually went to all Recon legends instead. So pretty much a nice little switch, because a lot of the Recon legends are like out of meta a little bit, so that'll boost them up a little bit. Now we're going to go into the support category. So starting off with 𝗏𝗏, we have the same 2 support perks, so I don't need to go over them, but his weapon is the Flatline, which is, just that. And then we also have Fortified. So Fortified has been removed from Caustic and Newcastle and been put just on 𝗏𝗏 as an additional passive, as you see right there. I'll get to Caustic and Newcastle in a bit, because they have different variations of this, so I'll get to them soon. But as for right now, let's go on to Lifeline. So Lifeline, her weapon is the 𝗲𝘂𝘁𝗁, and her combat revive has had a little bit of a change. So if you are a solo player, you are able to self-revive with your drone, and you have more health after you revive as well. Now, why I've done this is because if you are playing solo as Lifeline, you essentially have no passive, and this could allow for solos mode in the future. And then her additional passive is shield cells and syringes get consumed significantly faster. As well as her care pack comes with a respawner and a crafting station as well. Now for 𝗏𝗂𝗶𝗯𝗲. So her weapon is the alternator. Her additional passive, is thieving tactics. Steal from vaults and guarantee golden loot from loot features. So that's like 𝗏𝘂𝗯𝘁𝗂𝗏, the little cargo bot things like that. And that's about it for 𝗏𝗂𝗶. So here we go, we got Newcastle here. So we have the Spitfire for Newcastle, and then we have the armor deflections. This is the kind of similar thing to Fortified. So incoming ordnance and abilities ricochet back at the enemy. So this is going to be very good against like fuses and Mad Maggies and things like that. That have a lot of grenades, have a lot of damage and abilities, as they will just not affect Newcastle essentially if it's hitting them directly on. Now we're going to move on to the Skirmisher class. So we actually have a new ability here, and that is the Skydiver. You and connected teammates move faster while skydiving. So very similar to the Recon one, this is instead you move faster instead of you scan people. Pathfinder's weapon is the Peacekeeper, and then his additional passive is one that everyone kind of wants right now, is the Eyepiece Scout. Whilst holstered, zoom in to get better visuals on enemies. So now I have Wraith. Her weapon is the Hemlock, and her additional passive is Precognition. So better predict enemy movements by utilizing your sixth sense. So it's a little bit vague. Basically how I would see this happening is you can get like a little bit of a shadow of the person before they actually go around the corner, possibly. Don't know how that would actually work fully, and how they would actually implement that, but it is a unique idea, and I think it would be pretty good for Wraith. Anyways, let's go on to Mirage. So his weapon is the Wingman, and his additional passive is the Holotech. So first of all, his first passive, the Now You See Me one, he can also self-revive, since that ability essentially becomes redundant when he is solo. So you can self-revive whilst cloaked with that ability. And his Holotech passive, his additional one, is you flicker when you are shot. Now this does not make you invisible, it just kind of confuses the enemy a little bit on whereabouts you possibly are going to go. Similar to kind of like 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏's passive, where 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏 gets a speed boost when he's just getting shot at. Mirage gets a little bit of a flicker effect. Now we have Octane. So his weapon is the R99, and then we have the additional passive of 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏. So when your armor shatters, you gain a little speed boost, which is pretty helpful. I think just probably the same speed as the normal stim. Of course, you don't use the stim though. Then we have Horizon, which is the Havoc for her weapon. And then her additional passive is Trident Tier. Accustomed to tridents, you steer them better and boost them further. Now, I know not all maps have a trident, so this passive would be kind of redundant in a way. But it is probably the only passive that I would probably consider is quite redundant. However, it's a pretty OP passive, I'd say, as well. So I think it's worthy of being redundant, if you know what I mean, in some cases. And now I have Valkyrie. So her weapon is the Bow Check, and then her additional passive is Sky Control. So hover whenever airborne and holstered. So if you don't have a weapon out and you are also like in the middle of the air, you will not move. You will have to like pull your weapon back out again so that you can like drop again. But it's I would say this is a really good ability to kind of like confuse the enemy, to kind of like hover, and then if they're chasing you, they'll like fall down and you won't, and they won't have any audio about it. Now we have all the Assault Legends. So first of all, we have the normal Weaponsmith ability, and then we also have the Bandolier. So I just renamed that ability and made it look a little bit nicer, rather than just the icon. Bangalow's weapon is, of course, the G7, and her additional ability is Soldier's Last Stand. When downed, disperse a small cloud of smoke. So this is very similar to the Black Ops 3 ability. I can't remember what the character's called, but I think it'll be a really nice thing to have some ability in the game when you are downed, it just goes off, and then it only lasts like a few seconds. Now we have Revenant. I'm pretty sure it's all going to get reworked in the future, so of course the helmet might change. But for him, his weapon is the longbow, and his additional passive is Reaper. reap the souls of killed enemies to charge your shield. Which basically means whenever you fully kill a person, your shield goes up a little bit, so you get like more shield. And I think this is a pretty good ability to like kind of fit in with like Revenant's kind of style and playstyle as well. Then we'll have Fuse, so his weapon is the 𝗙𝗫𝗁𝗁 repeater, and his additional passive is 𝗙𝗲𝘁𝗁𝗁𝗲. In the lore, he is like a boxer, so I thought, why not add that? So, enemies are knocked backwards and damaged more when punched. I would say about 40 damage rather than 30, or maybe 45. And are obviously knocked further away whenever you punch them. So, just pretty unique little things there, make him more of like the character that he's, proclaimed to be. Then we'll have Ashe with the 𝗏 So all the abilities are exactly the same once again, but she has another ability of Executioner. Finishing enemies boosts your ability cooldowns. So basically the same thing as Revenant, except instead of it boosting your shield, it boosts your cooldowns. So you can use your cooldowns more often, similar to like Pathfinder's ability as well, where his cooldowns go down a little bit. Ashe's cooldowns go down a little bit as well. Then we'll have Mad Maggie with the Mastiff as her favourite weapon. And I actually moved both the abilities together. So Maggie's first passive is move faster and burn enemies using shotguns. So I've changed that completely. So basically currently there's like 2 different passives for Maggie in the game, where you move faster with shotguns and you highlight enemies that you hit with shotguns. I've completely removed that whole scan thing. And of course moved it over to 𝗙𝗂, as you've seen earlier. So now what you do is when you essentially have 2 abilities with shotguns. So you move faster with shotguns and burn enemies that you shoot with shotguns. So it does extra damage, shotguns essentially. And of course when you do damage to someone, it has the little numbers above them. So essentially it still acts as a scan because you know where they're heading. So it kind of works the same as what it was in the previous ability still. Except it's only for shotguns. And then her new ability is Ring Flare. So summon a Ring Flare after a squad is fully killed that deals ring damage to enemies. So when you fully kill a squad and you're scared that there might be a third party, a Ring Flare just goes off after you kill the squad. And that essentially protects your squad from third parties, because that Ring Flare acts as, a ring. It does ring damage. It doesn't do ring damage to your team, it just does it to enemies. So it's a nice little ability, and it's probably a bit too OP for a passive, but I like Maggie, so. Now we're going on to 𝗏𝗁𝗁, so the controller legends. I added an extra ability called Mechanic. Mend damaged abilities by interacting with them. This was originally going to be Catalyst's passive, but then it never actually came to the game, so I think it's better if it goes to all, controller legends, because it kind of just makes sense. So obviously you can mend your own abilities if you have another character on your team that has abilities that, get damaged, so mend them as well. Now, 𝗏𝗁𝗁's additional ability is Adapted Immunity. Reduce damage and movement debuff from all legend trap abilities. So he's basically almost a counter to not only 𝗏𝗁𝗁's, but all of the trap legends, which is pretty cool, honestly, and would probably make 𝗏𝗁𝗁 a little bit more meta now. And also 𝗏𝗁𝗁's weapon is the Devotion. Watson's weapon is the Volt. Now her first passive has been changed a little bit, so you can carry more ultimate accelerants, which reduce cooldowns for all abilities, so your tacticals and your ultimates, and it also reveals the next ring. So it's like a buffed version of her passive of the survey beacon. All you need to do is use an ultimate accelerant and you get the next ring location. And then her additional passive ability, whilst not getting shot, regenerates shields over time, which we already have in the game. It could get buffed a little bit though, because she regenerates the shield very slowly. Then we'll have Rampart with her Rampage, that is her favourite weapon. Her passive of increased mag size, reloads, and accuracy. The accuracy part I've actually added. I think that should be added. It should have been added from the start. Then her additional passive, Ramya's Extravaganza, get reduced prices for your squad in the replicator. A little bit of a supportive ability, because I think Rampart needs that a little bit right now to have something that actually supports the team rather than just her walls all the time that can just get destroyed pretty easily. And then we'll have Catalyst, which I believe is the last one right now. So her favorite weapon is the Nemesis, and then her additional ability is Reinforce. Disable and strengthen traps and placeables using your ferrofluid. So basically the mechanic ability, but instead you improve all these abilities, and you also disable enemy abilities. So it's basically a buffed version of that class passive. So yeah, that is all the legends. I would like to know what you guys think about all these. If you want to as well, read the backstories for all these different characters. It does have quite a lot of, pretty cool information about the characters and their lore, if you do care about that. And also, yeah, I want to know what you guys think about all these abilities, as I've obviously added quite a lot, and I want to know what you think, because, I might actually make a post on, like, EA or whatever, as, like, this could be future updates, whenever we don't get a new legend, they could add some of these abilities, so, yeah. Please let us know what you guys think about them.